speaking to the several of you who are sitting here representing the others, I think that frankly, one of the great thrills of my career in teaching is to see you having just made a world-class work of art. Questions?
Yeah, for Mr. Sosin. I'm just curious what your approach was in deciding what kind of ensemble you wanted for this work. I mean, there were parts of it that sounded very straight up like old school photoplay music, especially like the Phantom Chariot scene, but a lot of it seemed very modern. I think I speak for most people, it worked quite well, it was very effective, but there was almost sort of alien tort quality to it at times. So I was just interested, how you decide to use guitars, drums, along with the voices, as opposed to traditional woodwinds and strings.
So this woman wants to know how we decided on the ensemble, that some of the music sounded very traditional and like photoplay music, which is to say, like some of what you heard last night, if you were here, from extracted from the classical tradition of the period, although there was nothing here. Everything that I was playing was completely improvised in terms of those kinds of 19th century structures. But the ensemble was really given to me. I had no say-so at all over the ensemble. The musicians were self-selected. We had, I think, 8 guitarists, violin, drums, 3 or 4 laptops with various samples, and then the singers. Plus the sounds that I have built into this keyboard, which duplicates what I have at home, so I'm very familiar with it, and had pre-programmed things that I was able to just upload from my laptop into this version of the computer, so that I had all the sounds like pan flute, you know, that Romanian folk flute, and some of the other effects. So the style of the music, the aleatoric quality, that's a term that means very free improvisation with no particular structure or form, came out of the interaction between me and the students and Erin and Todd, and just talking about what we thought would work, and just trying it out. I don't know, we probably ran the film a total of 4 complete times, and then lots and lots of going back and going over and over different scenes. So, I mean, as I said before, it's still a work in progress, and you could work on this kind of film in this way for a month. And if you wanted, you could get to the point where every single moment was notated and very carefully constructed, but that was not the nature of this project. It was to be able to be spontaneous and to use some predetermined ideas and then be able to just be in the moment and take the chances and work together, listen together, and have a very fluid, dynamic process.
Todd Reid, who is a wonderful percussion improvisation teacher.
If I might add, prior to a month ago, we had no idea what this ensemble would look like, because it is largely a class that I teach, the electroacoustic ensemble here at UCD, which is loosely an electroacoustic improvisation type group. And auditions were the first week of school. I had no idea who would show up for auditions, what instruments they would play. So last spring, Donnie was asking, what will you have? And I told him, I have no idea. And so to me, it's a real testimony to you play the cards you're dealt, and you work with what you have. And unfortunately, what we have to work with is quite good, in my opinion, because these kids came together in an amazing way to work together, and I think most importantly, to learn to listen to one another in the creation of a score.
What was this experience for the 3 of you?
heard and have just a lot of input in it. I was thinking that Donnie would show up with the score all laid out and he'd just sing whatever he wanted us to sing, and that was not the case at all. It was really cool to be a part of it. And
I'm too lazy for that.
And we're too lazy to work on it ourselves. Anyways, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it was just a big learning experience for all of us. We've been talking a whole lot lately about collaboration, and this is pretty much the epitome of that. And it was really a lot of fun to just work with Todd's group and just see what all they brought to the table with the computers and the guitars and bass and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun to work with everyone.
What I'd really like to point out, if in the future you all had an opportunity to watch Donnie work with the students, it's such a treat to see how much space he gave them coming in when he really could have come in with a lot of parameters and a lot of boundaries, and he did none of that. And he really let the students take the lead, and at first they were very quiet and had no idea what kind of person he was, or if he was going to yell at them, or if he was going to be mean, and so they were very, reserved, and he let them do that. And then as they started to come forth with their opinions and their ideas, he let them bloom and really allowed them the freedom to create. And he became the maestro in the middle and took their ideas and made them into something wonderful. It's a real treat to watch him as an educator.
Erin Hackel, who's the head of the vocal ensemble, and just wonderful. We had talked about having Skype conversations as early as April, but it just developed that we didn't even know whether some of those students were going to be part of this ensemble. So we did, I met over Skype twice with some of Todd's students, and some of them sent QuickTime files of little demos of certain scenes that they worked on ahead of time. I thought from just seeing that they would be right on the money when it came to getting down to work, so I wasn't very concerned. As far as Ian's comment about bringing in a score, that would have completely defeated the purpose of an educational experience and a group effort and collaboration. And for me, I've written those kinds of scores, 40 minutes and hours worth of completely notated music for an ensemble. But it becomes just repetitive work that anybody could do. And what I hope to bring to these kinds of situations is the spontaneity and the way to draw this creativity out of students, which it's a blessing that I've been able to do this throughout my career. And I've also had the opportunity, and in terms of learning how to be a teacher for this kind of thing, at the Big Silent Film Festival in Pordenone, Italy, which is taking place starting next weekend. I'll be there as one of a number of pianists who teach a master class for silent film pianists, two of whom come from all over the world each year. And we work with them. Each of us has a different teaching style, and we make them play for films that they have never seen before. So we just sit them down and we say, okay, this is what we have to do very often in our career. We're working at the Museum of Modern Art or at Lincoln Center, and the film comes in at the last minute, or it's the wrong print, or it's at the wrong speed, and you don't know where it's been sitting in a Russian archive, and the titles are in Russian, and nobody's bothered to translate them. And so you have to see, you have to play immediately whatever's on the screen, and so you have learned to be able to just take chances. And we try to teach those students to do that, and so over about 8-9 years of those kinds of classes, and my wife and I go around to other colleges and have been doing these kinds of workshops with smaller ensembles. This is by far the largest group of students that I've ever worked with. And it was first very daunting to think, how do we deal with 25, 26 kids? But their input was so fantastic that it made it a very easy process, and I was able a lot of the time just to sort of sit back and enjoy what was going on. And then, pick out do this, let's do this, let's do this. So.
Yeah, how many times do you students have to watch the film to get a feel for the film to know what you create?
How many times do you have to watch the film in order to get a feeling for it? Well, let me ask the students, you had all seen the film before we met as a group. So you saw it, what, once or twice before that? So how many times did it take you before you got a kind of a sense of what was going to happen?
It really didn't take too long. I mean, just with all the ideas everyone was throwing around, after the second time I'd seen it, it kind of just worked itself out. You know, we definitely put a lot of energy and a lot of work into it. Had to kind of strive to get to our point, you know, where we needed to be, but no, it didn't. I mean, you can go so many different ways with it. It's like incredible to think about. You know, we could have made it hilarious, like slapstick music if we wanted to, but I mean, that's not what we were trying to achieve. But yeah, it didn't take too long to really figure it out. It seemed like.
Yeah, I agree. Once we all sort of got on the same page as a group, the ideas started coming really quickly. And after that happened, it was pretty much smooth sailing. I mean, there were spots where people wouldn't speak up or didn't have any sort of ideas, but that's when Don would jump in with his own ideas, and it went really well.
That said, we were all backstage, and I don't remember who I was talking to, but we said, so wait, Knock is a crazy real estate agent? And then, so, we could watch it again.
The beauty of watching these films over and over again is, like all great art, you always find new things to appreciate every time you come to it, whether it's a painting or it's a work of music or it's a film, you know. And this film and many others I started playing for films 40 years ago, and you know, I've seen this film now just this weekend alone 4 or 5 times. But still, you see there's this happening. For us, the challenge with this particular show, among other things, was the fact that certain of our cues were timed to how long some of the titles lasted on the screen. For example, Knock pulls the newspaper out of the guard's pocket, and it says, "The Plague," right? Remember that? Now, originally, the title in the first version that we were using had 18 seconds of screen time before cut back to him. This lasted about 4 seconds. And we had a very careful cue worked out with wham on the moment the Plague title, and then it faded out for about 5 or 6 seconds, and then somebody in the chorus had suggested, why don't we sing Ring Around the Rosie, which, if you don't know, was a children's song of the Plague time. Okay? A pocket full of posies. How many people know this story? Right, sorry. So, or if you don't know the story, people who had the plague had a very terrible smell, so you would hold some flowers to your nose to ward the smell away, and then ashes is really achoo, achoo, people are all sick, all fall down, everybody's dying. That's the meaning of that nursery rhyme. So somebody said, let's put that in, and it was great, and we had a nice long version of all fall down, which got really truncated because when it came push to shove, it was only like 4 or 5 seconds worth. So we had to make those accommodations as we went along. Other places, I don't know. Ian had wonderful suggestions, wrote a whole page of notes that we looked over about stopping and starting. And if you have an idea, see it through. Don't just sort of try something and then back away. Go for it. And I told everybody, you know, be prepared that it may not happen the way it happened in rehearsal, but that doesn't really matter. That it's all a process. And anybody who improvises a lot gets used to some days you're on, sometimes you're not. Part of it is the energy of the audience or what you had for lunch. Whether you have a train to catch after the show and all of those things. Let's take one more question. Yeah. Thanks. So Susan said, how do you make the film and the music and accompaniment and not get in the way of the film? And that's the tricky part. A lot of contemporary scores for old movies, very often, to my mind and other of my colleagues, really treat the film as accompaniment to the music. Particularly some of the groups that are rock bands or avant-garde jazz bands that say, wow, we've got some great music, let's find a film to go along with it. But we, our fans are coming to hear our music, so it doesn't really matter what film it is. We can show anything. That's completely antithetical to what we tried to do here, which was to act as accompanists. And I came to film with a background as a dance accompanist. And there, although there were set beats, I'm having, especially in an improvisatory situation, I'm having to react to the dancers and say, what are they doing? Or how can I support them? And in the best of circumstances, that becomes a collaboration. But you don't have that. You don't have the luxury when you're working with film where it's the same thing over and over again. So for any film composer, whether yesterday, today, or those in the future, I think one of the guiding principles is respect the film and let the music support the film when necessary and shut up when necessary. If you go to see any new film, you don't hear wall-to-wall music. There's some films where the directors or the producers don't trust the film. They'll say, we need more music here, we need more music. And if you watch Mystery, for example, on PBS, very often, those shows, some of the Poirots, less so the Miss Marples, are just drenched in music. So that you say, this is really supposed to be scary, this is supposed to be really more whatever. I think it's way over the top most of the time. It's Mitch Schlag. That means with lots of heavy cream. So it's something that you have to learn, and I frequently tape myself, first on cassettes and now in my computer, and I force myself to listen to what I've done and watch the film if there's a video available, and listen to see exactly, was it too much? I'm always asking my friends in the audience, did I play too loud? Like the famous quote from Gerald Moore, the wonderful British vocal accompanist. He wrote a book called Am I Too Loud? And that's what the accompanist is always concerned about. If you're really going to be a good chamber music or vocal or opera accompanist, then your job is to be there as supporting when you need to be and to know when it's time to be in the background.
I would just say to the question that Donnie allowed, you heard several different themes tonight, I'm sure you remember some of them, but he allowed the students to compose each one of those, and it wasn't the kind of process where he said, let's think of a theme. It was a process where we watched a character run for a little bit, and then we'd go back and he'd say, does anybody have anything? Nobody had anything. So we'd watch it again, and then somebody maybe had something. And so it was a process like that. So it really was film-driven for each of the characters that we had a particular theme for, which I think serves the film quite well. We really had to figure out what each of those characters and what they would sound like.
And that means you have to
get into the heads of the characters. You have to get into the setting of the piece and say, this is not taking place in Chinatown in 1976. It's taking place in Germany in 1838. So what is that? What are these people thinking about? What are their frames of reference? Does that make an impact on our style? And some of it, I thought, I mean, was very way out of that style, because when we get to Transylvania, we're in Fantasyland. But on the other hand, I don't think that there were many places in the film that stylistically you could not have heard this music in 1922. We didn't play any rock music. We didn't play, endless minimal music. We didn't play any bebop. We didn't play anything that might be looked at, I hope, as very anachronistic. Because if you listen to what was going on in post-war Germany, there was all kinds of stuff. And I always try to think about, well, what would George Antheil have done? What would Stravinsky have done if he had been asked to write the score? What would Schoenberg and Mahler and Hindemith and all of those people, Poulenc? And I listened to and I've kind of absorbed a lot of those styles myself. Everybody else in the band brought whatever's on their playlist to it. So we heard, electric guitars, okay, they didn't exist in 1922. But in terms of, there were theremins. When was the theremin invented? Does anybody know? Maybe that's later. But the glissando, you get that in Mahler. You get it in Strauss. So it's just an extension of that. So I'd be very interested in hearing some audience reactions about places where you felt that either you stopped being aware of the music and you were just caught up in the experience, or the music was too loud or too intrusive and you thought, this has nothing to do with the film. Anybody want to speak to that out there?